Hello guys, this is Emerald here, back with another character speculation video, and this time we're going to be going over the Dendro Archon, aka Nahida, who you meet in the Archon quest. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So this is how the video is going to break down. So first I'm going to go over what we know about her in the Archon quest, her supposed gameplay role, her fan-made kit, the the meat and potatoes of the video, her artifact setup, how to really play her with her playstyle, and what kind of team comp she can be running. And then at the end, I'll also throw in her constellations just for fun. Okay, so here's what we know so far about her. So we know that she's somewhat reserved and naive because during the part in the Archon quest um, where she's trying to help us break out of the dreams set by the sages, where we just constantly go back in time and relive the Sub-Zerus festival. Um, she hears a quote where she hears people say that if you go to the bathroom and take a number two, all your anxiety goes away. And she somehow repeats that to us, and then we're all like, huh? What are you talking about? She's being controlled by the academia, so basically, when the previous Dendro Archon died, the sages found her and they just basically brought her back to Sumeru and just locked her up ever since then. She has an inferiority complex with Greater Lord Rukadavaka because every time she's mentioned, she's like, "Oh, I'm not as good as Greater Lord. I'm not like befitting of an Archon compared to her." And then even in the Sumeru promotional video, she's like, Greater Lord, if Greater Lord Rukadavaka is the sun, then I'm just the moon. Other than that, she's pretty precious. She looks like a radish, and she appreciates her followers. She keeps one of them alive when they were on the brink of death in the Archon quests. So, her gameplay role. So we know she's a Dendro user for sure. I mean, she is the Dendro Archon. It would be kind of weird if she wasn't Dendro. And then my personal speculation is that she's going to be a reaction support, specifically reaction for the Dendro element. So this would be boosting all the Dendro reactions like um, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, Quicken, Aggravate, Spread. And she's going to be a Catalyst user because I can't imagine her using anything else. And obviously, if you're a reaction support, you want to build EM. So for her normal attacks, they're nothing special. All she does is Nahida inflicts her target with Dendro with her normal attack. It's pretty basic. But her charged attack, um, I'll just read it here. It says Nahida tries to enter the mind of her enemy, dealing Dendro damage. If the target survives and is a small enemy, they become possessed and fight for her for 10 seconds. While under the effects of possession, negative they receive minus 20% damage from enemies and cannot damage the party. Against larger enemies, Nahida will strike any weak points the target may have and deal heavier dendro damage. So, you know, with catalyst special attacks, I mean charge attacks, you could be kind of unique, because their charge attacks can be whatever you want. Um, so for her, I decide I would give her, something something that kind of fits her because we know that she can control dreams. Um, that's like that's like her power. So, and I balanced it out by only letting it work against smaller enemies. So it's not going to work against like big enemies like rune guards. But even then, it's not useless to big enemies because you can see that she will strike any weak points. So if she tries to mind control a rune guard, it won't work, but at least it'll disable it by striking its weak points. It's not very good, but it's some utility in her charge attacks. And then her skill. This is the major reaction support I was talking about. There's going to be a lot of text here. Don't worry, I'll explain it in the next slide. For now, we could just read this. It's going to have a 15-second cooldown and it generates 2 particles on cast. So, using the power of ley lines, Nahida sprouts a small ethereal tree called the Ermine Sprout. So, I thought of this name because, the big tree that you see in the Sumeru promotional video is called the Irminsul tree. So, Irminsul, Ermine Sprout. Anyways, called the Ermine Sprout that assists allies by dealing dendro damage to enemies whenever they are hit. The Ermine Sprout may be infused with one additional element for additional effects. When it is infused with Pyro, the Ermine Sprout burns, dealing small pyro damage to all enemies nearby periodically. When it is infused with Hydro, the Ermine Sprout grows taller and grows vines that raise the character when they are jumping, increasing their jump height. It will also periodically drop a bloom core once every 2 seconds when it is infused with Hydro. When it is infused with Electro, the Ermine Sprout becomes charged, dealing its dendro attacks faster and without assistance to a random nearby enemy every second. If the Ermine Sprout becomes infused with Electro and the duration ends, it explodes at the end, dealing Electro damage and applying the Quicken Aura to all enemies. I know there's a lot of text on the screen and there's a lot of colors on the screen. I have a picture on the next slide that pretty much will explain everything. So, how does the Ermine Sprout work? Um, so, upon cast, she summons a tree that can be infused with different elements for different effects. If you don't infuse anything, all the Ermine Sprout essentially does is a dendro version of Albedo's Flower. So, Albedo's Flower, you place the skill on the ground, and if you hit an enemy while inside the radius of the Albedo's Flower will strike them for, geo damage. So this is the same idea, except that she places down the tree, the Ermine Sprout, and if anyone hits an enemy within the circle of the Ermine Sprout, you can see like there's this small circle around Nahida. This is supposed to be her, by the way. The tree will strike them for dendro damage. So the main point of this skill is just to apply, dendro. And then as you can see with all the different infusions, so if you infuse it with pyro, you basically hit the tree with pyro, it'll set the tree on fire, and it'll do like small ticks of like pyro damage, right? And then if you infuse it with hydro, the tree grows bigger, and it'll have some vines coming down, and it'll increase your jump height, like as if you remember that one event. Well, there's a couple events, but the one in Dragon Spine where you would collect coins in the mountains, I think it was 2.3 for Shadows Amidst Snowstorm event. You collect these coins, and these coins would increase your jump height so for a little while you would jump like Shao, right? So if you infuse it with Hydro, you basically get that effect. You could jump like Shao, and the tree will also drop a bloom seed once every 2 seconds. And then if you infuse it with Electro, it will attack faster to begin with, and it will just deal damage automatically. So you don't need to deal damage from your current character in order for the tree to do damage. It'll just do so automatically, like Lisa's Burst instead of Albedo's Flower. And then the elemental burst is called Dream Guard. It's 60 energy cost with a 20-second cooldown. Nahida summons a Dream Guard that stays on the field for 15 seconds, assisting her with enemies. The Dream Guard deals dendro damage based on Nahida's EM and emits a dendro aura to nearby enemies. When the duration expires or if it dies, the Dream Guard will explode, dealing dendro damage. Additionally, any small enemies that are nearby when Nahida casts her burst will be possessed. So, first you might be wondering, what the fuck is that thing standing next to Nahida? So, For the design of the Dream Guard, I wanted to make it look like the husk that were in Kanomiya or like in the Chasm, because I feel like those designs are kind of underutilized. They're not even in the Abyss for some reason, even though I thought they would be. So I just decided to make like a Dendro version of it. So you can see it kind of looks like it. It has a like a leaf shield, and then it has like a Dendro axe. It's just a wooden axe. Um, so essentially, she just summons like an NPC that fights for you. Obviously, this NPC is gonna be like tanky. It walks around on its own, and it'll follow you around if you're in the overworld. But it won't last that long. It only stays on the field for 15 seconds. And if you're wondering how Mahoyo is gonna do this in the game, it's already in the game because in the new world quest with Rana, I don't know if you guys have done it yet. It's like a really long quest line, but I was really shocked when I first saw this. They had Rana literally fight alongside the Traveler, which I thought was pretty cool. You can see that in the gifs below. She's smacking the shit out of some shrooms. So if you could just imagine her doing that, but imagine some Dendro Guard doing that, it's the same thing. So yeah, Mahoyo has already released NPCs who can fight alongside the party. Dream Guard and possessed enemies will take advantage of that mechanic to be implemented in the game. Um, and then we go to her Ascension passives. So first things first, I didn't know where to put this, but you know how every time you level up a character, they start to get like the specialized stat. Like for Yaimiko, it's crit rate. For Kaching, it's crit damage. They just naturally gain this as they level up. So her specialized stat is Elemental Mastery, pretty obvious considering she's a EM support. And then her A1 is all allies will have their elemental skill damage and elemental burst damage increased by a portion of their EM. I forgot to write that. But so any character who's already has a passive similar to this, they basically just get this passive again. So for Yaimiko, she has every point of elemental mastery. Yaimiko's skill damage will increase. And then for Kuki Shinobu, her healing and damage will also increase based on her elemental mastery. So it basically gives everybody on your team um, EM scaling, and the ones that already have EM scaling in their kit basically get to double down on it, which is really good. And then her Ascension 2 is after casting Elemental Burst Dream Guard, Nahida grants her ally party members the Flower Crown effect for 15 seconds. Allies who have less total EM than Nahida will have their EM raised until it matches hers. So what does this mean? So in the example, I have a imaginary team comp. So we have Nahida, Klee, Xingqiu, and Yelan. And you can see on the left, I write down the EM of each party member before they gain the Flower Crown effect. So Nahida has 300 EM, Klee has 60, Xingqiu has 120, and Yelan has 400. By the way, you should never build your Yelan with 400 EM. This is just the example. And then let's say Nahida casts her burst, so everybody gets the Flower Crown effect, so they all get their EM raised until it matches hers, which would be 300. So for Nahida herself, she doesn't gain anything because her EM is always equal to her own, so she wouldn't gain anything. But Klee, because she started at 60, she gains 240 EM, giving her a total of 300 because it matches Nahida's. Xingqiu will only gain a total of 180 EM in order to match up 300, and then Yelan will gain nothing because she already has EM higher than Nahida. So that's how it works. So what is the Flower Crown? So how do you basically use the Flower Crown effect for Nahida teams? So you want to build teams that don't have any EM, since Nahida will just raise it to match her own. And the nice thing about, let's say Nahida has like 1,000 EM, right? And you get the Flower Crown effect, she boosts everyone on your team to have 1,000 EM as well. At that point, it doesn't matter who triggers the reaction because everybody is on your team is going to do massive reaction damage thanks to her. And then her utility passive is Lucky Grass King. When collecting plants in the overworld or in the Serenity Pot, party members have a 20% chance to double the product collected. So, like, if you're in Mondstadt and you collect some Valberries, you know they grow in packs of 4, you have a 20% chance to maybe receive a 5 in total, instead of 4. Or maybe a better example would be like, um, the sea mushrooms that Kazuha needs. I call them sea gonorrhea. I don't know what they're actually called, but you know what I'm talking about if you have Kazuha. So they grow in packs of 1. Um, so when you go around collecting them, you have a 20% chance to basically receive 2 instead of 1. It's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like it's a pretty good passive, considering that at the end you're gonna need to collect 168 of whatever local specialty a character needs if you want to level them from 0 to 90. So her playstyle. It is heavily encouraged that Nahida has the highest EM between all party members because of her flower crown effect. What this also means is for characters like Kazuha, I know there's a massive debate or like a fight going on between Kazuha players where they either can't decide if they want to build DPS Kazuha because they love using him or they build EM Kazuha because of his support capabilities. Well, if you have Nahida on your team, you can actually go with building attack on your sands, Anemo damage percentage on your goblet, and then crit on your circlet with the VV set, and then you're not missing out on his support capabilities or his reaction damage since Nahida will boost his elemental mastery up anyways. So you get the best of both worlds as long as you have Nahida. So her artifact setup, you obviously want to build triple EM. I guess you could slot in energy recharge in the sand slot, but that might not really be necessary. Here are the two main team comps that I thought up for her. So you got Hyper Carry Kazuha plus Nahida, and then you have any Nahida EM teams, such as Nahida Melt / Vaporize or Dendro Reaction teams. So the way Hyper Carry Kazuha works in my head, this is not C6 Kazuha, so this is just regular Kazuha. You have Kazuha, Nahida, Yelan, and Bennett. Because Bennett will give like 1,000 attack plus Noblesse. Yelan, when she pops her ult, she, you know, shoots out these like rain bullets. It'll let Kazuha swirl. It'll give something for Kazuha to swirl basically, since she can't swirl Nahida and not Nahida. She can't swirl Dendro, and Bennett doesn't apply enough pyro off field, while Yelan can. And plus her 50% damage bonus. It's not always 50%, but it ramps up to 50% damage bonus during her ult is pretty nice. And then if you really want to boost his attack even higher, Nahida herself can carry Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer to further enhance his attack. And then you can also have her skill infused with Hydro, because if you guys remember, when her skill infuses with Hydro, it will increase the jump height, which is not what matters, but it's the fact that you can plunge again on Kazuha. So that's Hyper Carry Kazuha. And then for any Nahida EM teams, basically what it is you just slot her in onto any team comps that want to utilize her EM sharing Flower Crown effect to boost the team's possible melt / vaporize damage. And this goes for all reactions. So let's say you're running like Melt Ganyu, right? And Melt starts off at 2 times damage bonus. If you do, I mean, 1.5 damage bonus if you're going cryo onto pyro. So for Mount Ganyu, if she has 1,000 EM, it's like giving her like a 4 times multiplier when she does a reverse melt. So this is just a for fun comp. So you got the overworld local specialty farming team. Then they're all lollies. So the team comp is all kids. It's Klee, Chi-Chi, Nahida, and Sayu. Klee's passive allows players to see resources unique to Mondstadt. Chi-Chi does the same thing but for leeway. And then Nahida allows you to basically double all the unique resources that you find. Well, a chance to. And then Sayu is your taxi because she could travel really quickly with her roly poly. And then here are her constellations that I thought of. So her C1, it makes her plant her Ermine Sprout last for 5 seconds longer when it's on the field. Her C2, generally regarded as like, the second strongest constellation next to C6. When she casts her Dream Guard, Nahida will summon another Dream Guard as well. So instead of 1, you get 2. Her C3 boosts her elemental skill level by 3. I think having her elemental skill level before her elemental burst is more important because to be honest, the Dream Guard effect, you're more using her ult to get the Flower Crown effect, and then her skill is just infinitely more useful because of how many different reactions you can support with it. And then her C4 is when Ermine Sprout is infused with an element, it will gain the following based on infusion. So if you infuse it with Pyro, Ermine Sprout strikes inflict a burning status on enemies as well, so they take a ticking Pyro damage. Hydro, active character gains 20% increase to their plunge attack damage and heal for a small portion of Nahida's EM while nearby the Ermine Sprout. So C4 Hydro infusion is more of a role consolidation. It gets rid of the need for a healer since Nahida will just do it herself when she uses her skill, as long as you infuse with Hydro. And then the Electro infusion is Ermine Sprout strikes inflict the quicken status on enemies as well. And then her C5 is just increase elemental burst level by 3. And then her C6, the broken constellation, is the Ermine Sprout can now be infused with all 3 elements at the same time while decreasing the Pyro, Hydro, Electro, and Dendro resistance of all nearby enemies by 20%. So, just a quick refresher, in case you forgot again. So if you got all 3 of the infusions, the Ermine Sprout is dealing small. Well, if you have C6, you also have C4. So I'll just summarize it for here. So the Ermine Sprout will deal periodic pyro damage to all enemies in its AoE. It will deal dendro damage whenever an ally damages an enemy in its radius. This is the albedo flower, the dendro albedo flower effect. And then on top of that, when they're hit, they get inflicted by burning and quicken, thanks to C4. And then it also boosts your jump height, increases your plunge damage, heals all nearby allies for a portion of Nahida's EM, drops a bloom seed every 2 seconds, and the tree will strike faster, and at the end of its duration it will also explode. Because if you remember, if the Ermine Sprout becomes infused with Electro and the duration ends, it explodes at the end, dealing Electro damage. So C6 is stacked if you can combine all the infusions. So it might not seem as much, but it's pretty much stacked. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think. I think this one is somehow not as OP as Alhaitham's C6 from last video. But yeah, let me know what you guys think.